Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar on how to increase uptime and capacity utilization with Busway monitoring. Today's presenters, we have John Barenbrook, who is a Senior Product Manager of Starline, as well as James Serwinski, the VP Product Manager for Sunbird Software. Today's agenda includes critical power monitoring best practices, followed by a live software demo, which includes 3D visualization of Busway, including tap box, power chain visualization, including live measurements, capacity utilization, and dashboard charts for capacity management, uptime monitoring. Now I'm going to pass it off to John to kick it off.
My name is John Barenbrook, as Aaron mentioned. I am the data center segment product manager for Starline, so responsible for all of our products in the data center space. Today, I want to talk a little bit about critical power monitoring for Busway applications. Before I get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what a typical track Busway system is for those of you who may not be familiar. So Starline's product range goes from 40 to 1250 amps, and it's all open channel Busway. So we have a power feed. There are joint kits, which are all compression style, meaning that they're 100% maintenance free, housing, tees, elbows, couplers, and of course plug-in units. And the plug-in unit can plug in anywhere along the busway in the open channel. So a traditional power system, you have remote power panels fed from PDUs. And from there, the remote power panel is then feeds each individual cabinet, typically in an underfloor plenum space. That can cause a lot of issues, as you can see by the photos. I mean, there's a significant number of cables under the floor, causes a lot of clutter. It can cause a lot of wiring errors. It can also block up plenum space so that the airflow is impeded. It also uses up valuable floor space, so the RPPs take up significant space on the floor. And lastly, maybe most importantly, if you want to add a circuit to an RPP, you either have to shut down the entire row, so the RPP is off, or you have to do live work, which is dangerous. So what Starline has tried to do is take the RPP out of the equation and feed the power directly into our busways. And so as you can see from the depiction on the screen, is that we do provide a point of use tap off for each cabinet. And so if you have an A feed and a B feed, you can literally see your protective device, you can see your receptacle connector and your meter all there directly feeding your cabinet. It really reduces errors since you can see it visually. And I'll stress that that's really important because in data centers, one of the leading causes of downtime is human error. It eliminates any cooling problems, and it creates more usable space on the floor. And it can eliminate the raised floor altogether. So with that overview in mind, we'll talk about how the Starline Critical Power Monitor works together with our busway system. So Starline has three main types of power monitors. We have what we call our M40, M50, and M60 series. So we're really creative with the naming. But the M40 series is typically used to measure the whole run of busway. The M50 series is typically used to measure the outlet level or cabinet level of the power consumption. The M60 series can do both, and that is really for direct current only. So some of the features we have, the M40 and M50 series, one of the most important things is we provide revenue grade metering, 0.5 accuracy or better, 0.5% accuracy or better across the full range. We can monitor multiple circuits from one meter. We provide temperature monitoring on our end feeds. These can come with display and non-display versions. So if you're a visual data center and you like to see the power as you're walking by doing your daily walkthrough and seeing if there's any problems visually, the end feed M40 monitor is great for that. We provide options for both Ethernet and serial communications. So, SNMP, Telnet, SSH, Modbus RTU, Modbus TCP. We can do all of that and more. We also have an option for Wi-Fi, and we can use any of these protocols simultaneously. So that's really a nice added benefit. For example, if you're a co-location provider, you can, as the owner operator, you may want to monitor the power consumption for your records, and then the customer can also maybe say use Modbus RTU at the same time for their own records. So it's really a nice feature of our product. Each of our individual CPMs comes with an embedded web page where you can navigate to the IP address, bring up the web page, set the configurations, see any alarm conditions or any values that you're pulling from the meter as you go through each individual meter. And you can easily upgrade the firmware as Starline rolls out new features using the embedded web page as well. Just to touch very briefly on the M60, because it does have a lot of the same features and protocols as the M50 and M40 series, but it is our direct current meter. So we can monitor multiple circuits from one meter, either A or B. And within a Starline track busway, there's typically 4 conductors or 5 if you have internal ground. So with the 4 conductors, those can be split into A runs and B runs, and the M60 meter can measure both of those. It's also a bidirectional meter in that if you're using renewables, for example, or in some DC applications where you're charging a battery bank or discharging from a battery bank, we can capture all those values, all those power values, and use that and provide that information for use later on. It does come in 2 voltage ratings, which is a -48 DC, typically for telco applications, and up to 380 volts DC for high voltage DC data center applications. Some of the benefits of using Starline CPM is it's a really secure platform. We comply with all IoT laws, including California Senate Bill 327, which is a fairly strict Internet of Things law. And we even go above and beyond that to make sure that your data and your network is protected. We ship our products with all unsecured protocols disabled, meaning that only protocols like SSH, HTTPS, SNMP v3 are enabled when you get it, and then you have to choose which protocols are enabled so that you're not surprised later on that an unsecured protocol is out there. We make it easy with our high accuracy. We make it easy for you to bill your customers. You'll see from Jim's demo here in a little bit that the DSIM integration is really smooth and really easy to do. It's non-proprietary protocols. It's all open, so you're able to use it however you choose. One of the benefits of using our meter as well is you can get really good data on testing. So failover testing without actually failing over, from A to B run, for example, and ensuring that you have the capacity on your redundant run to make sure your data center doesn't lose any downtime. You can calculate things like load balancing, making sure that your 3 phases are balanced, and providing trend analysis to make sure that your power is trending in a way that you expect it to, and it's not really increasing in one area or another. You can set capacity thresholds so that you know that maybe you don't want to go above 80% on a certain rack of your output. You can set alarms and anything else like that you want as well. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of Starline's best practices we've found over the years working with different customers, some of the things that have really been a value and a benefit to them. First, I'll start with daisy chain Ethernet. So the Starline CPMs can come configured in a lot of different ways, and having 2 Ethernet ports, 2 RJ45 ports, can make it easy to daisy chain together meters. So what that means is you don't have to run hundreds or thousands of home runs back to a switch of cables. We make it easy to go from one CPM in a plug to another CPM in a plug with no gateway required. if that's a concern that maybe the chain gets broken, although the time it's broken is just the time to connect from one switch to another switch. But for example, if you're worried about that or you're moving racks in and out a lot, we also have a mode called ring mode, which ensures that you have 2 paths to the switch and that your chain is never broken. We also offer 1 CPM to monitor multiple circuits. So we can monitor up to 6 single-phase circuits or 2 3-phase circuits within a plug-in unit. This is a huge benefit because we can reduce the number of plug-in units that you may have by combining multiple circuits into one unit. So you can feed, in this example that's shown here, you can feed up to 4 racks with 1 plug. If you have a very highly dense row, it can reduce the space problems you may have. And on top of that, it's easy to pull the values for the individual circuits through the DSIM because of the values that the Starline CPMs provide. We can also provide temperature monitoring in our end feeds. We can provide real-time data, which allows you to monitor how well the power cables are connected to our Starline busway. So, in that scenario, we're reducing or eliminating IR scanning, whether it's on annual basis or even more than annual. You can move from a reactive maintenance mode to a predictive maintenance mode. Really making your maintenance program smart rather than reactive. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, it eliminates any chances of hot work where maybe you have to remove a panel or add an expensive IR window to the end feed. And the last best practice I want to talk about today is breaker sensing. So breaker sensing is really a way to remotely monitor your breakers and your plug-in units to say, whether they're on or off. So, great for remote applications on the edge. If you have applications, in co-locations where you want to know the status of certain breakers, whether it should be on or off, you can pair this with your power data to understand, more of the physics of what happened during the outage. And you can pair it with pilot lights for easy local detection of the status as well. So you have the remote detection through the CPM, and you can have the pilot light for local detection. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to James for a demo.
Thank you, John. And I'm really excited to share my demonstration of our DSIM software, where how we collect the live measurement data, the rich live measurement data that you make available to us. We combine that with detailed asset management, including full power chain connectivity, configurability, and present that all in rich 3D visualization so customers and data center professionals can see their data centers from a remote basis better than being there. Let's get started. Here I'm looking at my site B, but I could be looking at any site, and I have my 3-dimensional view of my data center. We support layers, so you can track and display exactly the layers that you want to show on your visualization. And let me bring in the layer of the busway. And so now I have my busways in 3D view where I could see over each row whether there's 1 busway or 2, and then I could see the labels, and I could see the specific tap boxes underneath them. So you've got that high level at a glance view, but then I can easily drill down to isolate on a single cabinet or a row of cabinets and get a view of my cabinets, my compute devices, mousing over easily to see the device name, the make, the status. But these are all configurable fields by the administrator. You could show up to 5 attributes for any item. Above the cabinets, I have my tap boxes, and you can upload your high fidelity images to our models library. We also provide our high fidelity images that you could leverage. And so when I mouse over, I get a pop-up that shows me the name, the model, the status, and I can see the name of my two busways. I go front and back. And from here, I have the ability to double click to drill down into the tap box. And the tap box is one of the places where John includes his meters. And so we collect the live readings, watts, amps, volts, power factor, kilowatt hour, on a periodic basis that's user selectable. And then we marry that information with the asset and the circuit information. So here, the tap box, I have my hardware information. So what make, what model, what's the 3 dimensions, and these 3 dimensions are to specification. You could track serial number, asset tag. You could track identity information. So the name of this is S19A1. Track the status. So you can plan out your busways and then later issue a request to have them installed. You have your placement information, such as your site, the busway, the row, the position in the row, the face, which way the meters face. Then you have a number of panels that you can track additional rich detail information. So this busway has, this tap box has 3 receptacles. I could click to see what each receptacle is connected to. I see they're connected to dumb rack PDUs. I see the circuit status. I see the connector type. I see the voltage, the amps. You could have custom fields to track virtually any attribute, including the ability to create custom fields that are pick lists, where you control the pick list elements, or date, or true false. Any type of custom field can be created. We track rich, detailed asset information. So what was the purchase order number? What was the purchase price? Installation date, other key attributes. We track relationships. And then more detailed configuration, drilling down into the tap box itself. So I previously told you there's 3 receptacles, but there's 5 poles. And here you see the phase poles and which receptacle and breaker they're connected to, and the status and what rack PDU they're connected to. So for example, this receptacle is connected to phase 1 and 2. And that is the magic of how we track the live reading at this receptacle and calculate it all the way up the power path to get you rich value. So let me just show you, for example, if I went back here and drill down into S18, so this is another tap box. I see here the live reading that this meter, that we collected for this meter, and it's showing that it's actually drawing 3.3 kilowatts, or 53% of the capacity. And from here, if I click and drill down, I could see a circuit trace of that receptacle and what are the other items in the power chain that it's connected to. So what busway breaker, what PDU breaker, what bank breaker, and then I have the ability to show the readings. And so this receptacle is delivering a load of 3.3 kilowatts, and you see that this actual load is summed up all the way up the power path. At this PDU breaker, this is the only load that's connected because it's still 3.3 kilowatts. But if I had other receptacles connected to this PDU breaker, our software would calculate the load at this point, just like an electrical engineer would. And we ensure that when you're applying new load to each receptacle, you never go above the load that would trip a breaker and cause downtime. And so that's one of the key points of how we take the live measurement, use our detailed connectivity information to track the load at every point and help improve uptime. So this is very, very sophisticated. So then you might say, well, how do you keep track of those, the wiring at every path? And that's because we have a vast, detailed models library with over 37,000 items, and we're adding new models every month based upon customer requests, as well as customers have the ability to add their own models on the fly by just cloning our models and editing them. Our models library gives you, as with all our views, the ability to create your own list views. So I can easily have a view that says, show me all of my models that are of type Starline Busway. And so here I have 10 or so Starline Busway models, and I can even understand the key attributes about it, such as how many times this model is deployed as an instance. And so this one is deployed once, but this model is deployed 35 times. From here, I could drill in and get more detail about this particular model. And one of the things you see here is that it's in the model that you create your breaker configuration once. And then every time you deploy this model, all of this information, such as the three-dimensional attributes that allow us to render the instance in 3D, come for free with no extra effort in your part, including what phases are created to what breaker, and in this particular case, phase 1 and 2 for this model. If I go back to my visualization here, I can double click and look at the busway itself in detail. And the busway, as with all our items that we track, rich details, have the hardware information, the identity information. One additional attribute that we give you here for the busway itself is the ability to override the elevation. So we always make our software easy to get started, where you could set a global setting. And so you can set all your busways to have a certain elevation off the floor. But if you have individual busways where the elevation varies, then you could come to this detailed page and edit it right here and adjust the height of that busway so it matches the exact physical environment. Again, so that people can look at their data centers remotely and see it better than they're there. So this particular busway has 1, 2, 3, so it looks like it has about 9 tap boxes. And you see each tap box has its own image, so they could vary. The images can vary. We track the position in the tap box, what cabinet it's associated with, the name, and we track budget values, and we track actual values of the measured readings. And in each particular case where we're showing the actual, you have the ability to see the actual being consumed now, or toggle to show the remaining capacity. And so you get those choices. You could track custom field, and you could create custom fields to track any attributes. You can have a full audit trail of all the add, moves, and changes that you have for this busway. From each tap box, I have my ability to go to the details of that tap box, which I already showed you. I could also go to the panel view where I could configure my breakers, but I want to show you the port inspector where I could bring up a high fidelity image of the tap box and have the ability to drag and drop labels so that people know which one is receptacle 1, which one is receptacle 2, and have the easy ability to click and show what's connected and what's not connected. Back at my tap box, I have the cabinet elevation that the tap box is associated with. And here are the ability to go from front to back and see high fidelity images. I can go from image to text. I could bring up health information, and I could bring up cabinet inspector details about the items in the cabinet, such as available ports, etc. I can have a full audit trail of this tap box. And again, where I'm showing these readings, we always try to give you options to show in amps or show in kilowatts, to show the current consumption or show what's remaining. And you have the ability to easily print this panel schedule so that you can place it physically in the data center if someone happens to actually be there and want to see more information about the tap box, particularly the breaker setup. So that is our collection of the live readings, our correlation of the receptacles to the poles, to the breaker, all the way up the power path, the ability to see the busway and the tap box in rich visualization, and the ability to make all of this easy with our vast models library, which keeps all the information about all your models so that you don't have to enter this information each time you deploy an instance. It comes by default, including the high fidelity images. So now, well, what else can you do with this information? Can you take it to a higher level? And you absolutely can. So I showed you one way of how we help you improve uptime by preventing you from tripping a breaker by applying a load that'll go above a circuit breaker rating. We also give you the ability to set full thresholds so that you can easily have an at-a-glance view of your data center and look at it from a temperature perspective. What cabinets are too hot, they'll show up as red. I have my threshold set here, but I could easily adjust the thresholds to be more accurate view that I want to look at right now. I can bring in measured amps. These measured amps would come from either an intelligent rack PDU or a busway tap box, as John was telling you about the best practices. So by selecting these two measurements, I could select more, such as weight or health, and get a correlated view of how this information compares to the thresholds I've set for my normal environment. And of course, red is bad, green is good, right? And here I can see on a cabinet by cabinet basis, what is the actual measured amps. So for example, cabinet 1E is fine from a measured amps perspective. It's drawing 18 amps, so it's green, but it's a little too hot at 80.9 degrees, just 0.6 degrees above what I believe to be the ASHRAE higher range. We work closely with our customers to work on rich, detailed visualization so you can see your data center better than being there. It's harder to get to data centers. John pointed out that human intervention is often the cause of downtime. So I can go from here front to back faster than you can go to the back of a row. And you can see the actual load. You could see the humidity and the temperature sensors without stretching your neck to look at the LED display of a meter. I could isolate on a particular rack and put that rack in X-ray view and see that rack and the contents of that rack at true dimensions, as well as, again, the live readings that we would collect from the tap box or intelligent rack PDU. So in addition to rich 3D visualization, we collect the live readings and turn it into very informative business intelligence information in our dashboard charts and reports, such that you can get the most capacity utilization out of your existing resources. So our enterprise dashboard has a set of standard dashboards that include an enterprise overview where you can easily look at all your resources such as space, power, and cooling across all your sites. You can have an enterprise class at-a-glance view of the health of all your sites. And the health of these sites include not only the current and voltage traps, that additional thresholds that if they're crossed can give you an indication of a warning or a critical situation, such as three-phase balancing, such as temperature, just to name a few. Our dashboard gives you the ability to plan out your projects. We track all the key states of an installation, such as planning, equipment in storage, installed, archived, and we give you the ability to manage them in terms of IT infrastructure deployment projects with the ability to get easy at-a-glance view, what-if analysis of the impact of your projects on space, by cabinet, or by row, for example. So all our dashboard widgets are easily selectable to give you an adjusted view, as well as what if on power. We have then a number of standard folders for every resource category, and then each user has the ability to create their own set of personalized dashboards. And I've created a set of personalized dashboards to show you some of my favorite charts that you could create using the live data from John's Busway meters. So here I'm on my Busway metering dashboard, and I have a gauge that tells me my budgeted power capacity. And so I can easily see the power by site. So site A or site B. Here I have the ability to chart out my actual versus planned power and power capacity per cabinet. So this widget gives me each bar being a cabinet, such as cabinet 2B, what is the actual power load right now, and what is the planned load. So to get a better visualization, you could double click, all our charts are interactive, and I could double click and see that I have load only on cabinet 5C and cabinet 5L, 5K, and 5D. But if I single click on plan, I see that I have a lot of projects to deploy compute devices that are going to ramp up my actual load. And then one more click, I could see that I've got a problem here. We're planning to deploy more load in cabinet 5J than the cabinet has capacity for. So while 5J has no load right now, there's activity going on that's going to cause a problem. And I want to drill down to get the details of that and investigate that. You can trend chart virtually anything. This takes the tap box load and sums it all the way up to power path. So I could have a chart of my actual load, my max, min, and average load for site A over time. And these charts are very interactive. Let's say I want to drill down and get a little more detail in this range. It's as easy as dragging back and forth and getting the details.
Hey, James.
Yes.
We have a few questions coming in.
Okay.
I was wondering if we could take a break and answer some questions.
Absolutely.
So the charts that you were just showing for power, are you able, Syed is asking a question, are you able to get the similar charts and widgets for environment sensors, the trending charts?
Absolutely. And that would have been under my standard charts under cooling. But I'm focusing my demonstration today on the live power readings from the tap box. But yes, you can trend power, including a really impressive time-lapse video of hotspots being formed and hotspots being dissipated.
Jeff, wait a minute, has a question about the software itself. Is this Power IQ or DC Track?
This is DC Track. Power IQ is our enterprise class polling engine that under the scenes is collecting the data. and DC Track is fetching it from Power IQ upon a demand as you select a widget.
Hey, John, Edward Petrus from Indonesia has a question. What is the accuracy of the metering in the tap boxes and the end feed units?
Yeah, it's we're at least 0.5%, and it's billing grade.
Okay, and then there's another question on the tap boxes from Ashraf. Do we need additional software to enable what you mentioned earlier about ring mode and the circuit breaker status sensing?
No, so ring mode is offered as a standard, settable, configurable item with every meter, and every M50 meter, I should say. And then the circuit breaker status sensing is a special configuration where you would need some additional hardware and have to order the correct configuration of our meter ahead of time.
Okay, and then there's a question about, I guess it's related to the health poller, James. Does the tap box, is there some kind of health polling so that you know that there's a blackout period or something wrong with communicating or getting data from a tap box?
Yes, you have the ability, we have a data poller and a separate configurable health poller. And so you could configure them to be polling at different rates, the health poller typically at a more frequent way, so that you're the first to know if there's a connectivity issue to that meter, or if the meter is just not responding because of loss of power, or the meter communications is down.
Kevin Robertson is asking a question about the trending and historical trending with the Starline Busway meters. Can you do historical trending reporting via DC Track on those tap boxes?
Absolutely. So that's what I've shown here. For example, this is trending by location. So this is taking the load at a meter and rolling it up all the way at a location. This is trending, so I could double click and go full screen mode. And so this is taking the tap box meters and trending them on a cabinet basis. So 5L and 5C have loads. I could single click, and now here's my load from the tap box by cabinet. So if there's two receptacles feeding two dumb PDUs in a cabinet, we could still provide you the live measured reading of each of those cabinets over whatever period of time. Here I'm selecting past hour, but I could easily make this past month or any other period, as well as a date range. And all our data can be exported to Excel to serve as a secondary report, as well as you could drill down to get the underlying details of the data that makes up the chart.
Hey, John, we got a question for you from Andre. The question is, how do you convince a customer to use the Starline bus bar in the white space, when it's not even designed yet, it's kind of early stage?
Well, I'd go back to my beginning slides when you look at the benefits of Starline bus bar over a traditional power method of using, say remote power panels and cables under the floor. A lot of issues with additional wiring, live work, errors, prone to errors, cooling issues, and more. So I mean, we certainly have folks all over the world that can help articulate that in a much longer way. But very simply, it's a more elegant system with and very high reliability.
Thanks, John. Lucas has a question for you, James. Is the Starline capability and support only supported through DC Track, or can you also use Power IQ?
You could use Power IQ. Any live data in DC Track comes through Power IQ as the enterprise class polling engine. And so if you're in your environment, you just have Power IQ, it can collect and report and send email alerts and trend chart on Power IQ, just like you can on Power IQ.
And another question on the software on the Sunbird side, have you developed dashboards for manufacturing assembly lines, production floors too? I guess the application is where a busway is deployed instead of in a data center, but instead in a manufacturing or assembly line.
So our reporting and charting is very flexible. We just have to understand in the assembly line, what is the drop down? I assume maybe the power is feeding something other than a cabinet, right? So that, you can certainly chart and trend the meters, and we would just have to talk about what are the aggregation points.
Take a pause on the questions and hand it back over to the presenters. Thanks for all the questions.
Yes, thank you for the questions, and thank you for jumping in, Herman, and asking them. Those are great questions, and keep the questions coming. So one additional chart that I want to highlight here is something that helps you with power chain breaker utilization, leveraging the load from the busways based upon being collected live load. So you could select what location you're at. You could select the level at which you're going to use the live data. So I'm going to select the busway. It could also be a power panel. This gives you, on a busway by busway basis, what is the actual load, and in terms of percentages. So for example, this is 33.6% of capacity utilized in amps. I could vary this by site. So here I'm looking at site B, but I could change it to site A. Sorry, I was looking at site A, I could change it to site B. And then all our charts, you have the ability to drill down and get the underlying detail. And when you drill down and get the underlying detail, you get some summary statistics over here that are quite relevant. And when you hover over, like I see an icon here, hover over, you see the maximum line get drawn. And then, but here are the underlying details that you could then further filter, sort, and export. And here, each panel, I can look at and see what cabinets are connected to it. So get what is connected information. I can get the voltage. I can get the amperage. I can get what phase has the maximum load. I could get the load of each phase. So phase A is 27 amps. Phase B is 14 amps. Phase C is 24 amps. And here the max load is 27, because that's the load that the highest load is the one that would potentially trip the breaker. And here you see what's the percentage of the three-phase unbalanced, and what is the lowest phase by load. So to help balance your phases, this gives you an indication of the next load that you want to add to this busway should be connected to phase BC. Any additional questions, Herman?
Yeah, there's one question about how does the Starline information visualizer is shown in Power IQ. This is from Lucas. He's familiar with how it is shown from a rack PDU, sensors, and smart lock features, but he's questioning how Power IQ shows the tap boxes.
So Power IQ does not have the same visualization capabilities of DC Track. And so we've designed our portfolio so that Power IQ is a very good enterprise class data collector, very good at storing the data, the live measurement data, and very good at giving you quick charts and latest reading information and some gauges of capacity and consumption. But when it comes to visualization like this, or visualization where you could actually see the busways and a tap box, Power IQ is not a visualization tool.
Another question from Lucas.
One final chart I just want to point out is that you could leverage the load from the tap boxes to help find stranded power capacity at sublocations like rack, cabinet, or row. So with this view, you could look at, on a cabinet by cabinet basis, where am I stranded power capacity? And the stranded power capacity is the difference between what you've budgeted when you deployed equipment, thinking that that's what your devices are going to consume, and what is the actual load being measured by the tap box meters. And this stranded power capacity gives you the chance to unleash it and get more capacity out of your existing resources.
Herman, do we have any other questions? I know that you did a bunch and they were awesome. Do we have any lingering ones?
Yeah, head Bon, looking to see if DC power is supported and how that would look like.
Yes, DC power is fully supported. I'll hit at a high level how the software supports it, but then hand it off to John to talk about the different meter types. But we have done all the calculations such that our software can handle DC power just like we handle similar in feature and functionality to AC power. We've just adjusted the calculations. We have all the different DC power model library objects in our models library, like BDFB and those type. And we have quite a few very, very large telephone operators that have significant DC power infrastructure using our system. John?
Yeah, likewise. So I mentioned the M40, M50, and M60 meters. The M60 meter is our DC power meter. So all the energy characteristics and measurables are provided through that and can be pulled with Sunbird.
Hey, John, there's a question for you about the modules. Are they hot swappable? I'm assuming the reference is to the tap boxes.
So yeah, tap boxes are hot swappable within the Busway, and the meters themselves are not hot swappable.
Hey, there's a question from Ashraf about the different types of meters that are supported. Are Unitza meters supported in the system?
Yeah, I mean, so Starline has their own proprietary, Starline Critical Power Monitor is the meter that we typically utilize, but if a customer has a unique preference on metering brand, we often support that as well.
Okay, great.
So thank you guys for attending this live webinar. If you guys have any additional questions, please feel free to contact us at marketing@sunbirddsim.com, and have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.